Okay, there we go.
All right, so this is the project we will be working on today. It is a little pouch. It is using the Crocodile stitch. This is what the inside looks like. These are the little scales from the inside. As you can see, they alternate back and forth to give you the lizard crocodile type look of the stitch. To get started, go ahead and chain 42. Now you can make this as big or as small as you want, as long as you go by groups of 6. This gives you the scale and a space between the scale so you can alternate. The reason I do that is because when you sew it together, that way the stitches are lined up the way they would be in the rest of the pattern. So it ends with a scale and then knot on the next row and then a scale and so on and so forth. To continue, you're going to do 1 double crochet in the 3rd chain from your hook. And this will count as your first pair of double crochet on the very end. It has the chain 2 and then the double. And you're going to chain 2. You're going to skip 2 chains on your main chain, and then you're going to make 2 doubles in the 3rd one from your current working stitch. And you're going to keep up that pattern all the way across. Chain 2, skip 2 chains, 2 double crochet in the next, all the way down to the very end. And it should look something like this, where you have 2, a space, 2 more, all the way down to the very end.
For those that just joined, in the chat is a link to a simple pattern if you want to follow along.
And there are pictures on the pattern to help out with where I am in the pattern at this point in time. We're just making the first base row of the pattern. You'll be using these to make your scales, as I call them. Some people call them petals because they kind of do look like flower petals, but I call them scales. Because I personally like calling them dragon scales better than calling them the crocodile stitch. And when you get to the very end, you're going to want to make sure that you have 2 doubles in that very first chain that we made. Okay. And so this is what it's going to look like. You'll see that you have 14 little pairs of double crochet when you're done with that. Now we're going to go ahead and make our first scale. And by doing that, you are going to chain 2. And if you notice, I turned my work on its side so that I'm not working straight across. Now I'm working kind of sideways. I will be doing 4 double crochet around the post of the last double crochet we just made. You can see that right there. So with the original chain 2 and then the 4 double crochet we just did around that post, you should have 5 right there. When you get to that point, you're going to chain 1. And then I turn my work a lot in this pattern to help me get the way it needs to be. So I completely turn the work around, and we're going to put 5 double crochet going up the post of this double crochet. And that gives you your first scale. You have the chain 2, 4 double crochet, the chain 1 at the very end, and then 5 double crochet all the way back up. So it should look something like that so far. To continue on to the next one, you are going to skip this set of double crochet, this pair of double crochet. We're going to be working on this one. So as you can see, when we lay our scale down, it kind of reaches about halfway on that one. That's where we want that. We're going to actually start our next scale on this one that I'm pointing out with my hook. What you're going to do, I like to put my finger behind it so I know which set I'm working on right now so that it doesn't get confused, or I don't get confused. And then go ahead and do 5 double crochet around the post of that first one. That 5 should put you at the bottom again. You're going to do chain 1, turn your work, and then 5 double crochet up the second post. And as you can see, now we have 2 scales here. We have a scale, a space, which is going to be this one here in the middle, and then another scale. And we're going to go ahead and just continue that all the way across. And to me, it helps to hold on to the one that I'm working on so that I don't get confused, because there's a lot going on behind, so that I know exactly what I'm doing and where I'm at in the scale. And when you get to the top, so this is what the back looks like after our first 3 scales. See scale and then space, scale, space, and scale. Now this one's going to be a space, so we're working on her scale in this one. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. Or if there's questions about the pattern also, just let me know. And just remember, it's 5 double crochet down the first one, chain 1, and then 5 double crochet up the second one in every other pair of double crochet from the base row. And then this will be the last scale for this row. We're going to leave this one empty. Okay. And now that we're finished with our last scale, it should look something like this. You should have 7 scales total. And the back will look like this, where you have a scale and then a space and a scale. And to attach it, we are going to do just a slip stitch into the top of this double crochet here, just to hold that scale, the end of that scale down. Now we're going to begin the base row for the second row of scales. You're going to go ahead and do 2 double crochet, or sorry, 2 chains, and then 1 double crochet in that same spot that we did the slip stitch in. So that was 2 chains, 1 double crochet in that very end one, the starting pair that we made. It's always going to have that on this same side. Then we're going to go ahead and chain 2. And we're going to put 2 double crochet inside of our scale. Just like that. Then chain 2. We're going to put 2 double crochet in between the 2 double crochet that we did not use for the last one. And it's going to actually tack this row down to help it stay in place. So it should look like that. It's holding down the scale from the previous row so that it doesn't move too much as you're working. Chain 2, 2 double crochet in the scale, chain 2, and then 2 double crochet in the space between these 2 double crochet. And you're going to keep that pattern going all the way across until you've finished your second base row. And the last pair of double crochet, we're going to be doing inside this scale. We're not going to put one at the end, just inside. Now it should look something like this. Where you have a row of scales all the way across, and then we have the base row again. And so we should have 2 double crochet in each scale and 2 double crochet in the space between the scales also. Now, we're not going to put a scale here. We're going to put a scale here. So instead of chaining, we're actually just going to start our double crochet straight into the post of this pair. Now we're going to do 5 double crochet down that first post. And then chain 1 and 5 double crochet up the second post of that pair. And so it should look like that. We have scale, scale, scale. So they're overlapping each other. Now we're going to continue with the pattern, skipping every other pair until we reach the end. And each row should have 7 scales. Sorry, my cat decided to give me a, a little piece of hair in my project. So again, you'll see how it's alternating. If you find that you do have a scale sitting on top of another scale, just go ahead and undo that and move the scale over to the correct space. And I do find that it is easier to hold the scales from the previous row down a little bit so that I don't accidentally catch one of them with my hook. Sorry if I'm making anybody dizzy. I tend to turn my work a lot in this pattern simply because it's easier for me to keep track of where I am. And then on this row, we are actually going to put a scale in this very last one. And that is the first 2 rows of the project. If you'll see, we have one sticking out on the end down here, and then one sticking out over here. That way, when you fold it over, you can actually tack them down and make them seamless. So it doesn't look like there's a big seam going down the side. Sorry, let me get something white to lay that down on. It isn't showing up quite as well as I'd hoped. There we go. So now you'll see that you have 2 completed rows of dragon scales or the crocodile stitch. To do our next base row, what I do is I slip stitch into the double crochet that I just made and into the space that the scale just made. I'm going to just slip stitch right into it so that I can make my first pair of double crochet right in here. So I'm going to chain 2 and then 1 double crochet. And that will count as your first pair of double crochet for your next row. And chain 2. And you'll alternate the scale rows every other row so that it gives you the V is what I call it, or the alternating scales. I'm going to put 2 in the space between the 2 from the previous row. And then chain 2 and 2 double crochet in the scale. We're going to do 1 in this scale. I'm going to do 2 double crochet in this scale and then chain 2. And we're actually going to put 2 double crochet in the first. If you look here, this is the first part of the last base row. So we're going to go through the top double crochet of the last scale and into the 2 double crochet from our last base row. And you're going to do 2 double crochet right in there. And so you should have 2 rows of full scales and then 1 row of base row. And to start this next row of scales, we're going to go ahead and repeat the first row of scales that we did. So we're going to chain 2 and then do 4 double crochet into that last double crochet we just made. And then chain 1 and then 5 double crochet going back up. We're going to skip this one and go on to the next pair and do another scale. So 5 double crochet going down the post of the first double crochet in that pair. The chain 1 and then 5 coming back up the second double crochet from that pair. You're going to continue the pattern with alternating, sorry, excuse me, with alternating the scale and the space all the way across. And the back's going to look something like this. You can see the scale and then the space all the way across.
We have about 10 minutes left.
Yes, ma'am. And then this will be the last scale in the third row of scales. And then a slip stitch into those last two that we made. Just to tack that one down a little bit. All right. Now, does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask or anything on the pattern? That's pretty much it. You just go back and forth alternating the first row and the second row, just so it's a little bit skewed to one side or the other. And that way, when you do fold it in half to make your pouch, it does line up pretty seamlessly. Sometimes I even have to look to see where I actually sealed it up because I can't tell. But the seam is actually right here on this pouch.
That looks really good. You did a great job with that. It is hard to see.
That's why I do the ends the way I do them, so that we can actually alternate, so that you can't see it from the outside. But if you do look on the inside, I do have it sewn together there. But from the outside, you really can't tell that there's a seam right there. And then across the bottom, I just did a blanket stitch to sew that closed right there. I don't know if you can see that very well. Were there any questions or anything?
I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.